God warned Adam that eating the fruit of this tree would make him know right and wrong.
Well, it looks good.
Yes.
Across various mythic and religious traditions, one of the most common motifs among them all is the world tree. Whether the Mayan, the Norse, or in Abrahamic religions, we find this reoccurring trope, this tree of life. But what is this exactly? How did all of these cultures come to use this same motif? Throughout these various depictions, we find similar themes. Themes of immortality, this mythic godly quality, and the phrase, the axis mundi. So what wisdom would one glean if they divulged these various mythical and religious tropes? What might we learn then of the Garden of Eden and the Tree of Life and the Tree of Knowledge therein? Given all these voices across the expanse of human history, what is the Tree of Life? Through deduction, we can say with certainty that this initial motif originates or dates furthest back to Siberia. This is the shamanic tree of life, as it represents the three different realms: the underworld, the middle world, and the upper world. The tree then, depending on what kind of tree, depends on which culture, of which we'll discuss later, is this unifying or centralizing symbol. Its roots dig into the earth, its trunk is on our level, and it blooms above where we can reach. It also expresses this as above, so below, where the roots of the tree resemble the limbs of the tree. Though deduction tells us that this comes from Siberia, our earliest physical evidence of this is Domuz Tepe in Turkey. If this motif is one in the same, then that means that the physical evidence goes back all the way roughly 9,000 years ago. 9,000 years ago. Whereas if we move forward in time for more concretized examples, then we could look to the Hittites and find it in 3000 BC. We could go even further into the 8th century BC and see it very clearly in the Armenian traditions. So when it comes to the actual evidence, it shows that this motif belongs in Central Asia, if not the Levant, and then extends itself out to the Middle East. But this is just a rough tracing. We can find examples of the Homa tree in Persian paganism prior to any monotheism in the area, but it extends its influence into Zoroastrianism. So in this, it extended all the way back from the animistic into the pagan and then through to the monotheistic. Focusing here briefly, we can see an example of how this works. In the Zoroastrian tradition, the first man and the first woman are brought about by the tree. This is resemblant of the creation story of mankind in Norse mythology as well, each coming from a tree, mankind directly delineating from this, quote, tree of life. Right away, we can start to see a little bit of an allegory here for the family tree. We have this established antagonist as well, which is either a frog or a lizard that seeks to poison or destroy the tree. Where exactly the snake will enter this story is contested. But nonetheless, we already have this establishing motif of the tree and this perceived antagonist. Regardless, by the time we reach the Assyrians, this is already a divine symbol that represents the sacred order of all things. So, in the earliest of civilizations, this is already a mythical trope. Now, I should also add that this isn't always plainly just a tree. Sometimes it's rhubarb, sometimes it's the mythic Homa, but there are tales, several, that give the fruit of this tree plant a elixir of immortality quality. There's a fair number of cultures that have this motif. A tree, a plant with a fruit that gives some degree of immortality. For the Taoist tradition, this was a peach. For the Norse tradition, apples were believed to give immortality. And then, of course, in the book of Genesis, both the tree of life and the tree of knowledge play varying roles in this regard. But we'll tend to that one later. So right away we can see that this is well established across Eurasia. Not to mention the Druid tradition and how much reverence it had for trees as well. But what really makes this even more mysterious and intriguing is the fact that this is amidst the Mayan tradition. Well, across the world, the Mayans have this tree of life. And at its base is a water lily monster. Throughout its midst there are serpents and birds, and this is the reoccurring motif across the world. Most often there is a bird or an eagle atop and a serpent gnawing at the roots, representing the underworld. The symbolism here is pretty direct. The serpent crawls on its belly. It is of the earth. And the eagle or the bird is that of the sky. So it's very much immediately observable, the different dimensions that the tree is symbolizing here. With the Mayans, this central trunk of the tree is representing the Milky Way. According to the Popol Vuh, there are 4 different trees planted at each cardinal direction of the world. Each of these hold up the heavens, and the 5th tree is in the center, and this is the one that connects the lower world to the heavens. So there's one central tree. This is, in comparative religious terms, the axis mundi, the column or the pillar of the earth, that which holds up the center of it all, or the center of the universe. The name for this tree translated is the green tree or the first tree. This is Xibalba, the creative expanse of all variant forms of life, and evokes contemplation on the afterlife and the continuity of life. So this first tree represents a few different things. It represents this cosmic order that we pre-established, this central axis of all the cosmic powers, the balance of it all, as above, so below, and how everything branches out from everything else. But then there's this spiritual growth aspect as well, that of which we aspire towards as we move towards the heavens in our evolution. And then there's life and death. Without getting into the Mayan creation stories or the Mayan afterlife, we can see very plainly how the tree deals with death, how it becomes life for future forest dwellers, how it is a home, both in its corpse and in its life. With such heavy associations and symbolism, it's no accident then that when we look back to the Nordic tradition, that Odin is seeking wisdom from hanging himself on Yggdrasil. His search for wisdom leads him to the tree. And of course it does. As the unification of all living things, as the unification of all realms of being, that is certainly where you'd go to find wisdom. This sacrificial aspect to Odin here is very mythologically implicative. Yggdrasil here is uniquely an ash tree, where when we find this trope throughout the greater European continent, it is most often oak. And in this, I would harbor a guess and say that whichever culture is giving this world tree designation is giving it to their tallest tree, where they live. What is the tallest tree? Oak is most certainly associated with the Proto-Indo-European sky father, thus Zeus and thus Jupiter, or Ius Pater. So there is this messy case of the leader of said pantheon or paganism and their association with this world tree. In the case of Yggdrasil, it extends to 9 different realms of being. Not to mention that 9 is a recurring sacred number to the Nordic tradition. 3 times 3 equals 9. There's a lot to discuss here. The variant species that are declared as sacred for various purposes. Apple, yew, alder. There's so much to mention in the way of the history of sacred trees. But if we're just focusing on the world tree here as a motif, then it's Yggdrasil as ash, and this suggestive recursion of the use of oak in this symbolism as it extends out to the Welsh, out to the Druids, out to the Celts, so forth. But the most provoking, in my opinion, is the sycamore tree, or the fig tree, depending. In ancient Egypt, the sycamore was associated with the goddesses Hathor, Isis, and Nut, all very powerful and dignified goddesses in the Egyptian tradition. This life-giving tree, a meeting place for lovers, a number of different mystical and magical associations. The Kikuyu people of Kenya find this sycamore tree to be of the most sacred and associated with their creator deity. And curiously enough, the fruit of the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden is most likely a fig. And the reason that is because, again, the greater association mythologically with this area, for one. But for two, what do Adam and Eve cover themselves with when they are ashamed of their nudity? Well, right there, immediately on hand, it is a fig leaf. Okay, so then it is presumed that this fruit of the tree was in fact a fig, associated with the sycamore tree. The apple serving this function in mythology is an appropriation of Celtic mythology. So that is a later mythological drift, which is confusing because historically the apple was associated with immortality. With its appropriation for this purpose in the biblical Eden story, it's doing the opposite. So you can see the confusion of using this as that device. Coincidentally, the tree that Buddha sits under, the tree of enlightenment, the tree of awakening, the Bodhi tree, is a large fig tree, this Ficus religiosa. So, strangely enough, the Buddha is sitting under another likened fig tree, as it is very implicatively involved in the Garden of Eden story. So it seems across the Middle East, this was the trope. This was the iconic sacred tree, a fig tree of some kind. Coincidentally, from an academic standpoint at least, the final version of Genesis as we've inherited would have been put around 400 BCE. And again, coincidentally, the story of Buddha's enlightenment is dated around 400 BC. Whether sycamore or Ficus religiosa or the ash tree where Odin is getting his knowledge from, in that case, Odin seems like it's a much more transformative process, much more of a sacrificial process. Odin puts up his life to achieve this wisdom. In a more figurative way, so does the Buddha. And in a more direct way, in the sense that you will die, Adam and Eve eat of the fruit of the tree and open themselves up to death, the knowledge of good and evil. A pervasive attitude towards the trees in Celtic traditions, as it extends up to the Britons, was that the tree represented their ancestry. If somebody came along and cut down this great tree, they believed that their people would be weakened. So in this way, the tree is a vestige of the knowledge of their ancestors. It is their connection to the wisdoms gained throughout their lineage, throughout their family tree. So to eat of the fruit of that tree would be to gain from your ancestry. If this was a ubiquitous attitude across the ancient world, or if this was the initial attitude that was given towards this initiating myth, then it seems by the time we reach the Garden of Eden story, or even by the time that we reach the story of the Buddha, that this might have been already misunderstood in its origin. While this is speculative, if you're wishing to achieve a mystic knowledge, you're not just getting that blindly from the universe. If you're getting it from the tree, as the stories tell, then it's coming from your ancestors. Those who have lived before know of the mystic truths of the universe, and they are handing it over to you in exchange for something. Nothing comes free, after all. Those with the ears to hear shall receive, that sort of thing. This ancestral tie to this knowledge and this familial tie to this tree certainly explains why, in the beginning of this session, we were seeing how mankind was believed to originate from the tree. Stories that tell that the acorns of Yggdrasil are our souls, and the storks pick them up and bring them to our mothers, so that the soul will be implanted in that person, you see. That's also the stork story. The poems about Yggdrasil certainly corroborate this, because what feeds the base of the world tree is the well of Erd, or the well of the word previously mentioned in the course of a number of times. This is also referred to as the well of memory. And it's said that if you betray your past, disrespect your history, then the roots will dry up and the tree will decay. So then there's this crucial aspect to memory, as it is associated with the tree of knowledge, or the tree of life, ? After all, who is at the base of this tree? Who is tending to the well of Erd? Well, it's the past, present, and future. It's the Norns. Again, we have that triple motif. The past, the present, and the future. The roots of the tree, the middle of the tree, and the upper parts of the tree. You can see how this isn't just a underworld and heavens and middle world reference. It's also extending out to all triple forms. Past, present, future, younger, now, older, so forth. So we might just say that the alleged immortality that comes from this mythic tree might just have something to do with ancestry more than it has to do with actual literal immortality. Before moving on, I want to extend the conversation back out to the aforementioned evergreen tree. As mentioned with the Siberian shamans, where I believe this all originates from, the evergreen tree and its relationship to the Amanita muscaria, the fruit of the tree, is also much later associated with the Persian deity Mithra as it moves into Mithraism, as it is in Rome. This is potentially the reason, or one of the early reasons, why Christianity will eventually pick up the Christmas tree, this evergreen and its association with what will become Christianity, implanted into Roman culture prior to any of the written stories of the New Testament. It's certainly worthy of mentioning that the psychedelic properties of this Amanita muscaria, this fruit of the evergreen tree per se, would certainly bring one to mystic states of being that would be likened to a state of immortality. That is a whole other kind of lead, a potential initial inspiration for all of these more mythical claims. that yet again the initial inspiration for this immortality motif is more figurative. So this has been a lot of information, so let's do a bit of a refresher to clear this up. If the prognosis that this story began in Siberia a long time ago is correct, then one could surmise the guess that this story was brought through the Bering Strait and eventually found itself in Mayan culture. The deep history of this motif is attested by the architectural finds in Turkey and throughout the Levant. The tree of life, as it is associated with immortality, seems to be the initial inspiration because that is ubiquitous. It extended itself all the way out to China, for instance. However, the tree of knowledge seems to be a later growth from this mythological origin and is mostly associated with the Middle East and the Mediterranean. It seems that when we find this knowledge aspect to the tree in the Druids or in the Nordic tradition, it is much more based in ancestral knowledge than it is in the Middle East. This ancestral knowledge, as it extends to the Druidic rites, for instance, the knowers of the oak is a proposed etymology of the word druid. Regardless of where we are, this motif is more or less the same, but the particularities change. Again, is it oak? Is it ficus religiosa? So forth. That can change, but the form of the tree and the height of the tree is the unifying physical characteristic. If we're being sincere, there are certain trees that you happen across that bring about their own innate mystique. And this innate mystique is certainly something that we could project into. But there's a reason beyond everything that I've mentioned so far why this tree of life, tree of knowledge motif is even more uncanny than history would tell us. So this whole time you might have been thinking about the Kabbalah. What's up with that tree of life? That seems to be a very different kind of reference towards this, a very different kind of inspiration. After all, the Sephirot are realms of being, different facets of the greater mind of the universe, much more abstract, right? And then there are these weird claims that people have tried to make work a few different times, how this tree of life Kabbalah is associated with the chakra system, how this chakra system are different realms of being that are all different compositions of the greater mind sort of thing. It's a bit haphazard, but people have tried pretty hard to make these synchronize with each other. Now, I have to point out the tree of life and the tree's nature, the tree's essence, its fractaling arms, and its resemblance to the nervous system and the chakra system to the spine. If our nervous system is this tree of life, then it's something that we share with all living creatures. We share this form with the tree. We share this form with all manner of animals. But what is the difference between us and these animals? Well, it would be our brain. Our brain is a different kind of tree, a different sort of fractaling out. And so then this tree of knowledge could be a different tree in the garden, that of which would make us distinctively different and believe that we would die. The mind as it convinces us of our own mortality. Perhaps then the story of the Garden of Eden isn't so much a story of the individuals that were at the garden partaking in these mythical ancestral events. No, it is in fact a story of our evolution from what is otherwise animal into growing the mind which would make us uniquely mankind. Our mind as it would give us shame, our mind as it would convince us of death, of sin, all this coming along with our minds. If this is the case, then the Tree of Life is the Axis Mundi, since our spine, or the world pillar, is what holds up our world, our body, our temples, you see. Then its extensions outward would be our nervous system. Then the Sephirot, or the Tree of Life, the Kabbalah, and or the chakra system are different means of learning about ourselves, of who we are, the age-old know thyself, the wisdom from the tree. Now, I'm not telling you that I'm sold on all this. I'm telling you that this is a distinctive lead. This goes in this direction. The serpent is interpreted then as the brainstem, or the reptilian brain, that of which we ascended out from. If we delineate from animals, then there had to be a distinctive point when we moved beyond that reptilianness. If we take this understanding or this approach or this interpretation and we look back to the Mayan tradition and those initial trees that are in the corners of the world, then this is almost like calling a circle. You call the different directions of the circle, you call up, you call down, and lastly, you call yourself. You are the center of the circle. As you call the directions, you are the final part. You are the final axis mundi. You are the world's pillar. It is distinctively spiritual. It is distinctively hermetic to point out the as above, so below, so within, so without aspect to life. That all of this is an animistic reality. That the tree is resemblant of your body. Your veins resemble the coursing river. Your head is in the clouds. Drifting thoughts come to pass. Dark storms and depressions come over you, so forth. There is much to be discovered in this inner-outer genuine wisdom of our waking reality and of the human condition. I don't believe this is a subject that can be given or distilled cleanly. I think it can only be teased at. That dust can be kicked up in the air, but you can't necessarily make the vision clear. But it is to say that this is a story that has followed us beyond civilization. It follows us deep into our ancestry. It makes us question a number of ancient wisdoms that we have otherwise closed ourselves off from. Most notably, our ancestry and the wisdom of the ancients. This is certainly something we've closed ourselves off from. Not to say that the wise and the smart people are these distant figures of the past, but that this is our lineage. We are connected to all this. We share the same form as all this. And it also makes us question, what is the nature of our mind? Is that what uniquely and distinctly makes us human? And if so, what is it for? What is its advantage and what is its disservice? The Tree of Life also beckons us to question the recursion of the world, the life and death cycle, to root from the deep below and to reach for the above. The symbolism is quite clear, but all this brings us to a much more animistic and natural orientation than we otherwise would have thought. While the Abrahamic traditions and modern religions will give you earnest wisdom when it comes to this subject, this does ultimately beckon back to the animistic wisdom that inspired it all, and it is rooted in ancestry, reincarnation, eternal recursion, and how you are the axis mundi. You are the tree. You are both a delineation from and the ancestor of this family tree.
And trees were long believed to carry the souls of the dead in their rustling leaves.
This Spiritual Studies course is an effort towards free public education on matters of spirituality, religion, comparative mythology, and the humanities at large. If you appreciate this session, it's in thanks to those who have supported the course in the Buy Me Coffee link in the description box below. This is not a profit for me. Any help with the course is to help recoup costs that I have put into making this course actively and publicly, freely available. So any support is earnestly appreciated. If you benefited from this session, it's in thanks to those who have supported the course. So thank you, sincerely. If you can't support in that way, there is a free Discord in the description box below as well. Stir up some conversation. You are not alone in your fascination for these subjects. With all of that said, stay curious and keep wondering.